really matters to us. And I said, what story are you willing to tell yourself? Because I'm saying things other people aren't comfortable yet to say. Now you're writing your story, recognizing this was not about me.
Emotional health coach and best-selling author, Dr. Neeta Bhushan.
Dr. Neeta Bhushan.
Allyson Byrd. For the audience, I want them to get to know your fullness of bravery in all of the ways, because I feel like some may know you and some may have seen you in so many different ways. And I just think that maybe we just unpack your becoming from the beginning.
For anyone listening to me, I think that the first thing that I'll say is I'm a hope dealer. Like, I hand out hope like crazy because my path has been so unexplainably supernatural. I grew up like a lot of humans where I had trauma in my young years, abandonment in my young years, shame in my young years, guilt in my young years. And that played out for me in the form of a dad that went to prison. The last time I saw him, I was 4 years old. And the last time that I spoke to him, I was 12. And Neeta, he said, I'll call you back. I'm 45. That hasn't happened.
You have a dad that, says that he'll call you back. So then what then was that pattern that was rocking in your mind for, now you're 45, all of those years, 40 years.
Yeah. And I was just about to say that I didn't realize how active and alive it was for me until I was sitting in your pool, in your backyard. And we were just having conversations with friends. I think you were putting the kids to bed, and we were just back there talking about what really matters to us. And I said, I'm ready to be beyond the abandonment and beyond the shame and beyond the rejection. And someone sitting back there said, what story are you willing to tell yourself, about it?
And so what is that story?
So a new story is currently emerging through me, a new story of understanding. What I've been doing to take myself through understanding is looking at the time I was born. I was born in 1977, an era of civil rights, not even equal rights for Black humanity in North America. And so when I think about my dad, I'm like, well, holy smokes. You were fighting for civility, not equality. You were beyond marginalized. You were steeping in suppression and oppression. And in many ways, you failed. And the story that I can make up has more compassion and grace than it used to have, which was I'm unleavable, I'm unlovable. He could not have wanted me. Now I can look at the times and I can understand what was occurring for Black men in that time, not giving him permission, not letting him off the hook of accountability and responsibility for a child that he co-created. And also recognizing this was not about me. And that feels very kind and benevolent to my spirit, which gives me a lot of possibility and a lot of movement and agility in my calling, where I was personally feeling restricted and constrained, which are what those emotions do for us,
Yeah. And I kind of want to, I want to dig into that a little bit more, because for little girl in you that, of course, and for probably a lot of the listeners hearing this and hearing your story and hearing how you're able to make peace with such a monumental time in your life. And I remember when we were in the pool and it was like such a big shift of, the recognition. I came back out and you got like, all of you were like talking and like talking about this next chapter for you. And I'm like, wait, this all just unfolded right now. This is what happens with like when we all get together in the collective. It's like the train just like goes so fast and you're like, yes, here we are. But I think for, for folks who don't really have that community and have had something really huge, happen that could set them to think the things that you probably initially grew up with thinking, I'm not lovable, I'm leavable, I'm not wanted. And they may not even know that those themes are playing in their mind. And then for you to flip the script consciously and choosingly, it reminds me of even, some of the concepts that I talk about in my book, That Suck Now What, of like the resiliency, which is not being tough, but it's the agility that you mentioned. It's that softness and the flow and the ease. What do you think it takes, and perhaps maybe what advice do you give to folks who are still on the latter end, on the I'm not lovable, maybe I'm never going to find love again?
That's a really great question. And I would say, for me, I began to notice my signs. And here's the really great thing about my own path. I noticed that I was stuck in a recurring view of myself. And the recurring view of myself was critical, it was judgmental, and I compared. So I was consistently looking at myself against others. I was consistently criticizing my last action with myself about myself, which gave me a lot of duality of thought, which is emotionally rigorous and exhaustive. And I found myself judging. Like over and over and over again, I had this voice of a bully. And so when you notice that, I actually created a methodology of understanding. And that's what helped me begin to be such a great leader for those of us that are on this path of greatness, whether we're striving for financial greatness, we want to create lots of wealth, because I don't believe anything bad happens when conscious humanity makes more money. Whether we're doing that through our legacy work, like you just wrote a best-selling book, and I believe that we are the living epistles of our time. So what I noticed in observing myself, and then I noticed it so much so with myself that I started really playing with our colleagues, Neeta, and like looking at their path and asking them questions. And then I noticed, holy smokes, this is what happens on the path of those that choose to be great. So I recognize that once we get through what I call, I learned this from Robin Sharma, the cult of average. Once we get through that criticism, that judgment, that continuing cycle of comparison, we've got to look at the life we made. And so when I looked around, I was like, oh my God, when I was living in that loop, I made a life of overextension, doing so much of what I thought I was supposed to do versus what I really desired to do. Then I looked around and I was like, okay, I felt not enough. And so not having enough and the fear that it produced inside of me, I started to do overgive. So that also was a part of being overextended on time, on money, on resources. I found myself sometimes giving my resources away to my colleagues and then needing that resource, and the resource wasn't even available for me. And I thought it was generosity, but it was wounded. And I began to see this cycle, this pattern. And so then I found that fear and shame had anchored inside of me and had become a part of my identity. So dislodging from it has been very difficult because I thought it was me. And so once I started seeing that, I was like, oh, this is fun to play with, but it was painful to sit with those ideas at first. I felt like I should be farther along than I was. I was having unfair thoughts against myself that had me stagnant. And then the last thing that I saw as a reflection of living this rejection and this shame and this abandonment was that I was cyclical and in patterns that weren't uplifting me. I was doing the same things, expecting new realities. And I wondered, why do I keep getting these similar results? And I thought I was a bad person. I thought I was an unhealable person. And I really thought God had made a mistake in the creation of me. And I wanted God to rescind the call on my life. I wanted God to just say, Allyson Octavia Byrd was a mistake. I think we should start over. That's how I really felt inside.
So much that you just shared to really like unpack so many of the gems that I can totally resonate with, and I'm sure so many of our listeners can totally resonate with this overextension. And I love how you explained the overextension can look like, trying to help everybody else out, trying to give away everything because you just want to maybe experience love. And I remember even in my, very first marriage where it was after, losing my mom and dad and my brother, you get into these types of relationships with men because I'm trying to heal all of these past and traumas. And so, thinking that somebody else is going to fix me. And so what I'm hearing, even myself in your story, I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's that overextension of here, take everything and I'm going to give it to you, thinking that that's going to make me happy, but it's actually kind of worse. And so, and was there kind of like this turning point? Because it sounds like, you got to really owning who Allyson Octavia Byrd is, and can it be that easy for other people?
Well, I think that easy and hard are both illusions. And I have defined the illusion of ease for me with 3 words: truth, honesty, and integrity. And so if it's true, if it's honest, and if I feel integrous in it, then that's easeful for me, even if the truth felt arduous. Right. So I've redefined easy for me. So what used to scare me with the idea of ease was that ease felt unethical, and ease felt like a hack or a shortcut. Ease felt like I could get in trouble. And so I know that it's trending that we're talking about living a life of ease. But for a Black woman that grew up in the 80s and 90s, anything easy meant you were going to go to jail, maybe prison. It meant something very bad was going to happen to you. So when my coaches and mentors brought this idea of ease for me, I had to pull away from the regurgitated notion that was moving through me that ease meant I was going to do something that was going to take me away from my freedom. And I had to define that ease was the path of freedom. And that's why I think when we talk through the lens of manifestation and the law of attraction, we've got to start having newer conversations for Black and Brown humanity, for parts of humanity that were called marginalized, even though we weren't. By the cosmos, society called us marginalized when we weren't able-bodied the same way as others, when we weren't falling in love with the same humans as others, and when we were born with skin of a unique color different than others. And that's a different conversation that I think people like you and me are normalizing.
You're so right. I feel like, in many ways, it's almost like this kind of undercurrent of privilege to talk about, I want this like ease and flow of life. And, we're championing it on all levels. Mind you, we know the law of attraction and we know kind of, the basics of manifestation, but I'm sure you get this. And I'm sure, I've gotten this too, especially growing up with the hard knocks and growing up in the time that you even grew up in, to even have that compassion for your dad, even, and I just want to, honor this too, but as a Black woman growing up in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. And I love that you said that ease was not the kind of ease that we're seeing on all those documentaries and all on the memes on IG and TikTok yet. So, what do you say to that? Because, in one light, it's okay, well, we choose our thinking. So, and you've already redesigned what you feel like ease can look like for you. But then in another lens, for somebody who's been through the survival mode, they're like, life is not easy. Life means you have to work hard, because that's what I grew up with. So then how do you then start to shift that worldview if we're going up against, where life is hard for our parents, assimilating to a new country? Life was hard. It wasn't ease and flow and all of these things. So I feel like in some ways, we have to acknowledge like the elephant in the room where, yeah, they had to struggle. And I mean, for us, we had to struggle as well, going through the things that we went through. But then where is that point of saying, okay, that this is a privileged conversation that we're having. We're very lucky that we can now have it. And can those who are also struggling right now or in survival mode, can they then choose a different reality that is ease and flow, like you have done it for yourself?
I could be interviewed by you all day long. Like the syntaxing of your questioning is just so exquisite. There are two different things that we're discussing, and I do not believe that they're separated enough in the consciousness of manifestation and even in the consciousness of consciousness evolving. That is that most of us are regurgitating, recycling, and revolving an identity we borrowed, not an identity we chose. And I love that Dr. Joe Dispenza has done the research on this and came away with a truth that says by the time we're 35, 95% of who we're choosing to be is borrowed. So then that leaves us with an awareness that 5% of who we are is actually the natural us. So
Wow.
for marginalized humans, and I'm going to say marginalized humans is in the psyche. So first, there's a societal marginalization that's imposed on us. Then there's a psychological marginalization that we take on based on how we lived the societal influence. Okay, so for me, I grew up Black in Texas, which meant I had very little exposure to ultra success for Blackness. Mm-hmm. So the opacity of oppression on my worldview was dark because I couldn't see beyond that. It's the same way if you grow up in a project or housing provided by the government, they build it so that you cannot see sunlight. They build it so that you live in darkness. And so we must understand that the first manifestations that you're stepping into are not for millions of dollars. They're so that you can reconcile to the truth of yourself. That's the first manifestation. You want to remember, you want to reconcile, and you want to renew your agreement with being a human of equality. When humans bypass that, like I did, so I bypassed that. And instead, I leapt from reconciling, remembering, and renewing who I was so that I could reclaim, reimagine, and reinvent. I bypassed it. So I just went over to reimagining something. So I just imagined a bigger life. Well, that's what got me traveling on the road with Lisa Nichols, who's a well-known author, speaker. That's what got me leading her sales. That's what got me hanging around millionaires and billionaires. That's what got me sitting across the table from Bob Proctor, talking to Neil Donald Walsh for hours, who wrote Conversations with God. Yeah, that's what got me mentored by Stedman Graham, sitting at the table with Grant Cardone, negotiating deals. That's what got me there. But what happened was at every one of those meetings, Neeta, anxiety, imposter syndrome, fear that it was going to be taken away, every $100,000 deposit, every $1 million sales goal that I hit, every best-selling book that I wrote, every stage that I garnered, new humans that wanted to be friends with me. I remember when Mel Robbins called me and said, I want to be your friend. And I'm like I couldn't let any of that land because a part of me kept thinking it's going to be taken away because I reinvented myself without remembering, reconciling, and renewing who I was from the beginning. That was my gap.
it's so powerful. And I feel like this is the you know, this is the bypassing, but it's also, all right, I'm going to dive into the law of attraction, and I need to see and expand myself and find those expanders in some way or another.
Well, can I
And it's
say
so
something to that?
yeah, can't, yeah, please.
Because here I was, this big person in the world,
Mhm.
living mega success, and then recognizing, oh, snap, I missed a step.
Mm.
That's bravery when you have to go, I got to go backwards in my journey to reclaim parts of me that I left. Girl, that shit scared me.
And
Oh,
that's the reclaiming and the remembering you. Oh,
yes.
so, but I feel like a lot of us don't reclaim or remember who we are. We just, we just bypass until some other crazy moment or life moment or sucky moment comes through, a relationship, a failed business, a toxic something, a betrayal that comes through that reminds us like you're human,
Yes.
and here are the lessons that you still have to remember and reclaim for yourself so that you can, fly forward in whatever you wish to do. So can you speak to how that process for you because I can only imagine you sitting finally at the table that you had envisioned your whole life when you couldn't see the sky. And then now you finally are like flying in the clouds. How was that process?
Oh my gosh. Well, I want to give just a prelude to that, which is there's so much hope. Because the more I delved into the quality of the illusion of the problem I was facing,
Mm. Mhm.
the more I delved into that, I birthed a new career through myself because I found that so many humans were just like me. We were all trying to get beyond the pain and into our purpose by any means necessary. We just could not be stuck at the pain. So our identification of purpose for many of us was this amalgamation of success. And it was mixed with pimping our pain.
Yeah.
It was mixed with fortitude and grit and hustle. And it was mixed with a pure heart, as pure as we could possibly make it. And that's my story. And I know now that I'm not alone in that story, which also gave me such a sense of peace to go, I wasn't crazy. I was simply doing the best I could with the knowledge that I had, with the skills I was garnering, and with mentors that were healing that path for themselves as well. So they could only teach me with as much liberation and freedom as they had as well. So now I understand that humans like you and I are at the stage that Mahatma Gandhi was at when he wrote the sentence, be the change you wish to see. We're now at that luxury. And that feels really beautiful. So I wanted to say that, that this is a luxury awareness. It's not oh God, I got to fix something else. We're not fixing, we're expanding. And many of us are in the bravery of walking away from bloody feet and heavy shoulders. And when you have bloody feet and heavy shoulders, you recognize, oh, my feet are bloody because my time for walking is expired. And my shoulders are heavy because I've been carrying the wings that were meant to help me fly. And so that's where I feel like I am right now. And then I wanted to preface the answer with that so that there was hope in there. But I wanted to toss it back to you before I go into the second part of the answer.
Well, hearing is kind of just even, you know, and I talk about this a lot as well. embracing the duality of the hard and the joyful, of the messy yet the magical, because in and of itself, we can look at all of those hardships, but to experience the contrast of them, to experience sitting at the other side of the table with all of the greats, yet still feeling like an imposter, those things are going to be coexisting. And, I think you mentioned it, you just stated it so beautifully in the way that you are, Allyson. I mean, it's just, I love chatting with you because I could listen to you all day. And yeah, I think we, in this world that we're kind of in right now, it seems like it's black and white and it's like all, zero sum, like all or nothing. And there is the rooms of gray. There is the like all of those feelings can coexist all at the same time and is totally normal, especially when you're navigating uncharted waters and not wanting to have the bloody feet anymore, or like seeing the heaviness on your shoulders and clipping, the wings, or like letting the wings go so that you can fly. There is going to be the duality of both of the sometimes paradoxical emotions.
Mhm. I love the way you position that. And so what did I do to start? The first thing that I realized was I started to acknowledge that I was living a brave path. I started to tell myself every day, you're on a brave path. You're on a path of greats. And I started to write names of greats that matter to me, that make sense to me. And I pull from them depending on what it feels like I'm living. I noticed that as a Black woman, I felt like I was always pulling from a Harriet Tubman. And the good thing about that was that I could pull from her relentlessness. The challenging part of that was I wasn't always rescuing people from slavery. So I noticed that if I was always pulling from her, feeling beholding to that. So I had to give myself permission to be universally brave. And as a woman of color, I could pull from an Ava DuVernay just as much as I could pull from a Steve Jobs or a Larry David, who created Curb Your Enthusiasm, and give myself permission to be on the spectrum of greatness and not only identify as a Black, as a woman, as a high school dropout, as an abandoned girl by her dad, as a human raised by a single mom. I had to give myself permission to go, girl, now you're writing your story. So that was the first thing, is giving myself permission to be brave. The second thing that I did was I gave myself permission to no longer be emotionally programmed. And yeah, that's been an exquisite thing. And this again has given me career longevity, because I'm saying things other people aren't comfortable yet to say. And one example is last year I manifested a great love in my life, and being over 40, ultra successful in America, and a woman of color, multi-million-dollar business leader, very wealthy in my own personal high net worth. The story that comes out in the world is, well, you're going to be out of luck. And it was like, am I going to be out of luck? And so I went to a mutual colleague of ours, had a one-day experience. I paid thousands of dollars to be there because I believe in paying for support. I believe in being mentored and guided. And I believe that when someone makes a seat at the table, they're being an earth angel. They are an answer to your prayers. And so I flew to Austin, went to the event. They asked us to do an exercise that, girl, I hated. It was like law of attraction 101. And I was like, really? They can't be more ingenious than this. I felt my ego flare, and I wouldn't even do the exercise there. I finally got back to my hotel room and I started writing. And girl, when I tell you I wrote about this man, I wrote about this man.
Oh my gosh. Share the details.
Listen, and I wrote his height, his build, his energetic sophistication. I wrote his self-expression and verbal vigor. I mean, you can tell I love words just listening to me.
Of course, yes.
And then I met him. Oh, I met him. And
How long after?
A few years after.
Wow.
A few years after I met him. I wasn't ready to meet him, and I knew I wasn't ready. There were things I wanted to do in my business, places I wanted to travel. I had no economy of attention to give another human. But when I was ready, I said I was ready, and I told the universe, and he came. And I mean, better than I could have written. He wouldn't even read the list because I said, "You are everything." And he said to me, "And you are everything." And our love blossomed. And then I threw him his first surprise birthday party. I was so excited. And 4 days later, his mother ascended. And we say ascended in my family instead of died. And it split our paths 6 months later. The grief, the loss, the transformation, and listen to the brave thing he said to me, Dr. Neeta. He said, "I love you, and I promised you forever. And when I promised you forever, I meant it, because I was the identity that would give you forever. And when my mother ascended and the vacancy of her presence ushered me into a newness, I don't know who I'm becoming. And as I heal, I don't know if that healed me will want what we've made together." And so in bravery, I am asking you for release from the agreements that we made so that I can become someone new, and hopefully you will too.
Wow. Wow. That is poetic. That's the best breakup I've ever heard. That could be a book. Oh my goodness. Wow.
So
And
when
how has this journey been for you unfolding in this new way?
I bring it up in the consciousness of being brave enough to be emotionally balanced and stable in the midst of that. The first thing that I did was I asked myself, what does the program tell you to be? And I wrote it. And I said, the program tells you to be rejected, to be manic, to text every girlfriend, to start screaming, to start crying, to order ice cream, pizza, to watch all the worst movies that tell you men suck, to I wrote, what does the programming tell you to do, girl? Because you better write it before you start auto doing it. And it steals your time, your energy, your devotion to you and my mission. My mission is to live as the happiest, most fulfilled Allyson. But this one conversation I had with someone I loved was suddenly begging me to negotiate myself out of wholeness. And so I called.
I'm so glad you wrote all of that out, by the way. Because that's all of the things we would probably all do.
All of the things.
With open arms.
Throw consciousness out the door. I'm supposed to be, and we all do this when someone dies. We do this when a birthday comes around. I'm supposed to be happy. I'm supposed to be doing things that Instagram gets excited about. Programming. We do it when we're setting goals. I'm supposed to want a $10 million business when you know you don't want to do that. You know you don't want to put that time, that energy, that devotion. You know you would really be happier with a $500,000 container that lit you up, but you don't want to be with your friends who are doing the thing. And you're like, well, I actually programming. So I started to find all these areas where my programming was just running me. But right now I had a big one. And so instead of falling into the programming, I wrote it. Then I called a shaman. And did I call a shaman I knew? I sure did not. I Googled shaman, Las Vegas, Nevada, because I live a life by guidance. And I said, somebody's going to come up that's going to help me. I Googled, and the first website was gorgeous. It had a WhatsApp number. I tapped it, and he answered, and he said, I don't even live in Vegas, but I'm on my way to Vegas to do a ceremony, and I can do one for you while I'm there. And this is what I said to him, Neeta. I said, I'm powerful, I'm spiritual, I'm conscious, I live a life that is grounded. I have just had a situation completely unground me. And I said, here's all the programming I've written down. This is all asking me to do it. I need you to come help me not. I want to be a different version of Allyson than I've ever been, but I only know what I know. And that was my bravery for that moment. So giving myself permission to not be in the emotional programming. And then the third and last thing that I do is I lead with the highest law, which is the law of harmony. And so anything that disrupts harmony with me will disrupt harmony in another. And so I honor and esteem harmonious decision-making, harmonious conversations, and harmonious leadership with my business. I tell my team members that they bring value. I tell them that I have quality love for them. I've written out what my definition is for love with leading my team. And that law as the highest governance of me keeps me willing to be brave and keeps me at the table, not only with bravery, but all of bravery's partners, because bravery will bring with it the energies of yes. Bravery will bring with it tranquility and peace, and bravery will bring with it prosperity. And it's prosperity that doesn't need batteries, which means it's easeful, it's in flow, and it's mine.
Oof. And I was just going to get into our igniting round of how do you define bravery at this stage of life?
For me, let me plug I just realized my system isn't plugged in. For me, I define bravery as living as the highest authority for yourself, which is very brave, to be yourself in spite of what others think. I define bravery as becoming nobody. When you become nobody, you remove the opaque expression of the ego. In this realm, we never fully remove the ego, but we can remove the opacity of it. And that changes how we show up in our world. And I define bravery as Ephesians 3:20 living. In the Christian text, I don't identify in religion, but I love garnering their truths. And Ephesians 3:20 living says, God will do exceeding abundant above all you can ask, imagine, or think, according to the power that worketh in you. And when I translate that into New Earth, Neeta, it says to me, when you live as the highest authority for yourself, and when you reflect that with the expression of joy and authentic humility, that is the power that will introduce you to a life beyond your wildest imagination. And it takes bravery to live brightly in front of others, because the world is very uncomfortable around humans who don't hate themselves.
Wow. That is so true. Wow. There's so many just incredible gems. I feel like, Allyson, everyone's going to want to know where to find you, how we can get connected, how we can stay connected. I've loved this conversation so much. And I feel like even just I think the big takeaway of figuring out like how to reprogram yourself. And, one of the big shifts of just being able to write down all of the ways you would react, get triggered, the things you would act on if those things didn't go your way. And to then, because you're aware of it and you're conscious of it, not do it. I just think that is just so brilliant and so, so valuable. Thank you for pouring into our community today. One word that describes this season of life for you. So good. How can we stay connected? I know that you have so many incredible programs. Are you still taking on, one-on-one, your community programs, all of the things? Tell us.
Thank you so much for asking me. So I hold this belief that we are in a time of super consciousness. We've not been here before where we're seeing that success and strategic alignment and soul is connected to our significance overall, that they're not separate. And so I work with the game changer, the pioneer of new consciousness. I work with the human that is living a disruption, from their universe. They're living the signs that now is the time to do more, be more, create more. But they don't want to do it through the lens of overextension and three-dimensional curation of success. So I do one-on-one. That is my jam. I am one of the best when it comes to private coaching, but I really call it more ministry than I do coaching. And
I love that
and then
so
I call it ministry because it's for the soul and it's for the heart and it's for the leader. And I'm one of the few people in the world that doesn't believe that just because you're doing significant work in the world, you don't have to become a martyr financially. Like, what's that about? And then I run a membership experience. I'm in my private room every Friday, and it's called Guided, because I believe we're out of the era now, Neeta, where you need my 1, 2, 3 steps. What we need more than anything is understanding of how do I tap my own guidance so that I know what's good for my own path, so that I can be in my own existence and lived experience of harmony. So I invite everyone to go to guidedbyallyson.com. And as always, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all the things, because when you are a beacon of light, you show up where everyone that needs you is looking for you.
This was so amazing. Allyson Byrd, everyone on the Brave Table.